Today's Parsha is about Isaac. Laughter. He laughs. Isaac's one of my favorite people. Eli said, "Oh, you've just had surgery. You should let someone else do this Parsha." And I said, "Not if it's Isaac." Thank you, Eli. I love your idea, but not Isaac. Not giving him up for anything. Parshas ago, we talked about his birth and the day he was weaned, the problem with his brother, then the day his dad sacrificed him. Last week's Parsha, we talked about his mother's death and his father sending a servant to select a wife for him. But in both of these Parshas, we were looking at the people around him, not specifically at Isaac. Today, we look at Isaac, although we could easily be distracted by his wife and sons. I want to spend the next few minutes being very intentional about looking at Isaac. Isaac was born when his father was 100 years old. His mother was 91 years old, and his older brother was 14. During his early years, he lived with a doting mother who thought everything he did and said was miraculous. And quite bluntly, from her perspective, it probably was. Who ever heard of a woman giving birth at 91 and then living for another 36 years to watch this miracle boy grow up? Miraculous! Of course, she treated him like a miracle. To give balance to his life, Isaac had an older brother who picked on him, made fun of him, and made sure he knew that he was anything but miraculous. Isaac had to look very deep into his brother to find any goodness in him. It was hard work to learn how to work with this bully, to see good in this bully, when all he really wanted was for this bully to leave him alone. Isaac's father was good and kind and loving and had poor boundaries. He loved both of his sons and thought they were both perfect. He could not tell the older boy to stop being a bully for fear the older boy would lose respect for him. Earlier in Dad's story, he could not tell the ruler in Egypt, "This is my wife, don't touch her," because he was afraid he might get hurt. When Abimelech decided to add Sarah to his harem, Dad had no objections, again out of fear. When the culture demanded he take a concubine to produce a son, he could have stood up to the culture and said no, but he didn't. Standing up and taking sides was too scary for Dad. He was the same with his two sons. He could not stand up for his younger son until Mom gave him no choice, and he had to send his precious elder son and concubine away. He was heartbroken. Mom wasn't. I doubt Isaac understood what his mother had done for him, although he did appreciate not being bullied. And he did appreciate getting Dad all to himself. Many of Isaac's personality traits were established during this time. You will notice them. We don't hear about Isaac again for about 30 years. No doubt, he was his dad's faithful shadow, and Dad taught Isaac everything he knew. Dad loved this boy with his whole heart, and memories of his elder son would have made the younger even more dear. Dad shared everything that ran through his head with Isaac, his past, his dreams for the future, his love for digging wells, and especially his relationship with God. Isaac was like a sponge and soaked it all in. Isaac loved his father's God and believed everything his dad did was right and good and perfect. Although we do not read about anything about these in-between years, we do see their fruit. The first time we see this bond between Abraham and Isaac and their joint commitment to obey God is in the sacrifice of Isaac. God spoke to Abraham and said, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering upon one of the mountains, which I will show you." Abraham got up the next morning, saddled his donkey, took two of his young men, his son Isaac, and wood for the burnt offering, and went to the mountain that God directed him to. After they had ridden 3 days, Abraham and Isaac went on alone, leaving the young men with the donkey, or maybe donkeys. Isaac carried the wood, while Abraham took the fire and the knife, and they went together. The Torah says they went, both of them, together. They were of the same mind and same purpose. There was no coercion going on, no force, no strength of will. Isaac was a young man in his 30s, possibly 36. Abraham was in his 130s. If Isaac was 36, he was 136. Isaac is young and strong. Abraham is old and his strength is declining. If Isaac had not been willing to obey God's will and become a sacrifice, it could not have happened. Abraham and Isaac spoke of what was going to occur on this trek to the mountain. This was not a surprise to Isaac. He trusted God. He trusted his dad. He was willing to go through the pain and death because he loved and obeyed God, and he loved and obeyed his dad. He was willing to put all of his dreams and his hopes into God's hands and his dad's hands and die, if that was their will. He was willing to put all of his dad's hopes and dreams into God's hands and trust that God would do as God had promised, even if this sacrifice did not make any sense to him. All those years of trusting his dad, and trusting God, the God of his father, came to a head as he lay there on the altar that he had helped build, on the wood that he had arranged, as he watched his father prepare to plunge the knife into his own heart, silently waiting, watching to see what God was going to do. And you know the rest of the story, how God shouted for Abraham to stop, and Abraham saw a ram caught by its horns in the thicket, and how Abraham and Isaac offered the ram as sacrifice instead. Almost immediately, we learn of the death of Sarah in Hebron at the age of 127. If we draw a straight line between Beersheba, where Abraham was staying, and the place where Abraham was sent to offer Isaac, Hebron is about 1/3 of the way north of Beersheba. Did Sarah begin the journey with Abraham and Isaac, but then got too tired and stayed in Hebron? Did the story Abraham and Isaac told her when they returned, how Abraham finally grew a backbone and made a choice between his son and his God, caused her heart to stop in fear? Did Isaac's story of the love and trust in God that was so great he would build the altar he was going to be sacrificed on cause her heart to break open in pride for her son? Could her love and thanksgiving for receiving her husband and son back safely cause her heart to break open in love and thanksgiving to God? Whatever the reason, Sarah died near Hebron and did not return to Beersheba with Abraham and Isaac. And Abraham bought a piece of land with a cave in to bury her in. And there he and Isaac mourned for her. And then they returned to their home in Beersheba. After his mother's death, Isaac was devastated, as we would expect. The first thing we see Isaac doing after the death of his mother is going out to meditate in the fields in the evening. The near-death experience of being sacrificed did not drive a wedge between him and God. Instead, it made the connection stronger. And it became Isaac's custom to meditate in the evening. And what better place to meditate than to wander through the wonder of God's creation? It was while he was meditating, enjoying God's amazing creation, that he saw his father's camels bringing him the bride God and his father had arranged for him. And he was comforted after his mother's death. Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah. Abraham was 140. The very next thing we see Isaac doing is praying for his wife. The first time they meet, he was praying. The second time we see them, he's praying for her. He is praying for his wife because she is barren, and God granted his prayer, and she conceived. We learn after the twins are born that Isaac was 60 when Rebekah bore Esau and Jacob. Isaac was praying for his wife for all of those 20 years before they had children. I doubt he stopped praying for her after their birth. Time passes. The boys grow. Jacob learns to cook. Isaac decides his stomach is more important than his birthright. Isaac and Rebekah are, meanwhile, still very much in love. A famine happens, and Isaac leans on the stories he learned from his father. He does not attempt to go to Egypt to live. His father tried that, but God tells him to stay on the land God had given him, and here God would bless him. So instead, Isaac took Rebekah to live in Gerar, just as Abraham and Sarah had done a generation ago. Again, leaning on the stories his father had told him, Isaac says that Rebekah was his sister. Because again, Isaac, like his father, is scared of the men in the place will kill him for his wife. But here the stories diverge. Rebekah is not taken into the harem. Isaac and Rebekah continue to live together and do nothing to hide their married relationship. Their relationship is so passionate that Abimelech, looking out his window, has no doubts about them being a couple and demands to know why Isaac lied to him. As far as I can tell, this is the most obviously intimate relationship in the Bible outside of the Song of Solomon. They haven't cooled it at all yet, folks. Unlike Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah are not asked to leave immediately, but continue to grow crops and get rich and richer. Finally, Abimelech and the rest of the people had enough of Isaac and Rebekah and their ability to get rich and asked them to leave. Isaac left, but not far. Abraham had dug a bunch of wells in the area, which the Philistines had filled in. Isaac redug these wells. One has to wonder why the Philistines filled in Abraham's wells. My first conjecture is that Abraham left Gerar in disgrace. The Philistines were angry with him, and what better way to show this, especially in a semi-arid environment where water is more precious than gold, would be to fill in his wells. It's like saying, you're not welcome. We don't even want to use the water you found, and we won't let you use it either. Not invited. My second conjecture is that these wells are almost dry. And almost dry wells are a great breeding ground for mosquitoes and other noxious insects. The water has turned to mud, and it isn't helping people anymore. However, it is a great breeding place for those horrid insects that make people sick. Filling them in would cut down on insect-borne diseases. It's a good idea. My third conjecture is that the wells have gone completely dry. My support for this thought is the words about there being a famine in the area. Famines are caused by crop failure. Crop failure is caused by not enough water for the crops to grow. Lack of water indicates dry wells. Dry wells are horrible safety hazards for animals and people in the area. Filling them in is a safe and helpful thing to do. Isaac redigging these wells addresses each of these conjectures. First, Isaac chose to be in relationship with these people, even if they told him and his wife to leave. He chose to be in relationship even though there was a history of problems with these people. Isaac could see under their contentious behavior and see the need for these wells. Isaac had learned how to see under contentious behavior, to recognize the unstated needs from his elder brother. What had been a survival skill when he was small became a loving way to interact with people when he got older. Second, muddy wells indicate there is water further down. Isaac was rich enough that he could afford to send his men down into the ground to keep digging. He was willing to use his wealth to help the people of the land. Clearly, the people of the area recognized he was willing to share their wealth, and they did not refill these wells just to spite him, although they had refilled the wells when Abraham dug them. Third, digging out the dry wells shows faith in his father, that his father knew where to dig wells, and compassion for the people of the area. Water is life, and they all need water to survive. Dad knew where to dig, so let's just go a little bit lower, and maybe there'll be water still. Isaac wasn't just interested in himself, in his own needs, but he was interested in caring for his neighbors as well. He knew how to build relationships. He showed this in his actions. After digging the third well, everyone had enough water, and he said, "For now, God has made room for us, and we will be fruitful in the land." Not just Isaac will be fruitful in this land, but all of them together would be fruitful in this land. After this, Isaac returned to Beersheba, and God appeared to him and promised to bless him and fulfill the promises God had made to Abraham. In response, Isaac built an altar to God, pitched his tent, and, you guessed it, dug another well. I love how Isaac chose to build an altar to God in the place that God had spoken to him. However, he did not build an altar and then just keep wandering. He pitched his tent there. He chose to live in the place where God had spoken to him. He chose to live in God's word. He chose to live and worship in the place where he had encountered God. And, yep, he dug another well. Now there was nothing to make him leave this place where he had encountered God. Soon after this, Abimelech and his advisor and the commander of his army show up. Isaac wants to know why they have shown up, since they sent him away and obviously hate him. Imagine. Isaac redug those wells, believing that the people hated him, but also believing this was the right thing to do. He could have left them filled in. He could have refilled them when the people of the area abused his kindness. He did not. And this behavior so impressed the king that the king could plainly see that God was with Isaac. And the king wanted to make a do no harm covenant with Isaac. So Isaac agreed, made a feast, and wined and dined them to celebrate the covenant, and sent them home in peace. And how did Isaac celebrate this event? You guessed it, he dug another well. I love this man. We don't hear anything more about Isaac for many years. When we do see him again, he is blind and knows he will die soon. He calls his eldest son, Esau, to him and sends him out to go hunting and prepare food for him so Isaac can bless Esau before he dies. Isaac talks about Esau smelling like the great outdoors, and he loves that smell. We remember Isaac meditating as he walks in the fields, loving the beauty of God's creation, maybe remembering when he first met Rebekah. Isaac talks about his son bringing him good food, And we remember how Jacob learned to cook and tricked Esau out of his birthright. We wonder if Esau gained the patience to know how to cook, or if Isaac is wishful thinking. Perhaps this blindness is not just a physical lack of sight. Perhaps these lovely memories are making him blind to what kind of person Esau really is. Or maybe Isaac thinks if he gives Esau his blessing, Esau will figure out how to live up to it. Some really weird things running through my head, and maybe through yours as we look at this. There seems to be more to be seen than what we are seeing. Esau and Jacob are the personification of the two sides of Isaac. Esau is the outdoors man, always outside, enjoying the beauty of God's creation. Jacob is the quieter, wiser man who loves to meditate on God's goodness and knows how to work with people. Perhaps Isaac believes that when he blesses Esau, Esau will gain what Jacob has and will be willing to love God and walk in the ways of God. Perhaps when Isaac blesses Esau, Esau will learn how to work with people. I don't know what's going on in Isaac's mind, but there must be something going on there. Rebecca does not believe Esau has that potential. Rebecca arranges things so that Jacob receives the blessing meant for Esau. Jacob gets the blessing and leaves. Esau comes in for his blessing and it's gone. Esau's response is to threaten to kill his brother and makes plans to accomplish this as soon as his father dies. Rebecca, of course, hears this and makes plans to keep Jacob alive. I wonder what Isaac's hearing. Rebecca tells Isaac that Esau's wives are driving her insane and it would break her heart if Jacob married a woman like this. And they should send Jacob to her brother in Haran. Isaac agrees that so fast one might think he'd planned this all along. Maybe he wasn't as blind as we were led to believe. Isaac immediately calls Jacob, blesses him, and sends him to his ancestral home to get a wife. Jacob leaves immediately. He believes in his parents' wisdom and knows a good idea when he sees it. Esau proves to everyone that he is not going to change if blessed. But when he learns that his parents were not pleased with his choice of wives, he marries the daughter of his uncle Ishmael, the guy who used to bully his father Isaac. This can't be good. What I love about Isaac is his strength of character. He is passionate about God, about his wife, about his sons, and about the land. He will live his passions regardless of what the people around him think or say or do. His faith in God let him look at death with calm and patience. His love for God caused him to want to live in God's presence. His love for his wife showed in his prayers for her, and he kept her from entering the harem. His love for his children led him to think the best of each and celebrate who they were, regardless of their differences. His love for the land and its inhabitants kept him digging wells so that everyone would have access to the water they needed to give them life. It's easy to see Isaac as a foreshadow of the Messiah. He was promised. He was persecuted by his brother. He carried the wood to the place where he was going to be sacrificed. He accepted death calmly, placing his faith in God and life in God's care. He was given life instead of death. After his death and resurrection, he prayed for his wife, the people of God, and mourned about her barrenness. He was passionate about providing water of life for everyone, regardless of their deserving. He loved his children regardless of how these acted. He had a plan, and everyone leaped to carry it out even without knowing what it was. Okay, maybe that last line wasn't obvious, that he had a plan and everyone leaped to carry it out. But as I was reading over the last part of the Parsha today, I was reminded of my own dad, who pretended not to understand everything or not to see everything, but somehow always got what he wanted because people wanted to do it. It was their idea, and there was no holding them back. And as I was looking at Isaac, as I would my own dad, I noticed he was doing the same things. He was blind. He got things all arranged the way it should be arranged. And yet, Isaac lived a life of strength and integrity, in favor with God and with those around him. And even when those around him did not favor what he did, he continued to do good. And people realized he was blessed by God and wanted to be a part of that blessing. And that last line, certainly true of the Messiah. Let's pray. Gracious God, you have blessed us in innumerable ways. Everything good in our lives comes from you. Sometimes we long for a specific good to come into our lives, and you say, wait. Help us to hear that word as a gift from you. Help us to live the faith that we profess, so that those around us will know we are blessed by you and long to be part of that blessing, a part of your people. Bring peace in our time, Lord. Let this be a peace of justice and compassion. Rise up wise leaders who will lead us with justice and compassion. Let them be like Isaac, who showed us what you are like. Listen to the longings of our heart, Lord. Come soon, Lord. Come soon. Amen. Amen.